Good evening, dear friends, and welcome to our Monday night vigil here at 10 o'clock from the South Lakes. And it's good to have your company this evening. Before we begin, I would like us to light a candle for peace, especially for peace in the Middle East, where the children of God, our brothers and sisters, are hurting in mind, in body and spirit. And with this light, we breathe in the very breath of God, and in our out-breath we blow blessings to all those who are wounded in this beautiful world, the Cathedral of God. I'd like to begin first by reading the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let the light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend upon earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. And from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Let us just be still for a moment. And using our gift of free will, we invite our higher self to embrace the divine within and without. And let us sit in that place of love. And let us be still now. Our gathering here this evening is for part 3 of The Source of Miracles, 7 steps to transforming your life through the Lord's Prayer. And this is an amazing book, certainly an eye-opener for me, because the Lord's Prayer is a prayer I say every day, many times a day. But since reading this book, gosh, I've gone from 70 miles an hour in saying the prayer to probably 2 miles an hour. And the slower I say it, there is a sense of closeness to the beating heart of God. On the back of the book it says, in this brilliant handbook, the author Kathleen McGowan unlocks the hidden power of the Lord's Prayer through its 7 simple steps. Have faith, find your destiny. Surrender, give up self-doubt, and claim your worthiness. Be of service, create heaven on earth. Prepare for abundance, ask and receive. Forgive, but begin with yourself. Conquer obstacles, understanding the 7 deadly sins, and love, obey the highest commandment. And in part 3, we're going to reflect on the mystery of the rose with the 6 petals. Our beautiful baby boy would be dead within an hour. That's what the doctors said, and had I believed them, he likely would have died exactly as they had predicted. But I didn't believe them, and I didn't because of what I learned from the rose with the 6 petals. The youngest of our 3 sons, Shane Francis, was born on August afternoon in 2001, perfect and healthy. Or so we thought. He appeared to be having a little trouble breathing after a few hours into his life here on earth. But we were told that this was not uncommon with a baby born via a caesarean section. At this stage, no one was too worried. He was placed under an oxygen tent and observed in the nursery for a few hours. And then he turned blue, before turning an ashen shade of ghastly grey. He was no longer able to breathe on his own. His lungs simply ceased to function. We would discover later that he had been born with a deadly condition that made it impossible for his lungs to inflate. But this wasn't even necessarily the most immediate concern. The crisis came from the realization that he had essentially been deprived of oxygen for several hours before anyone realized it. There was at this stage permanent damage to his newborn organs, including his brain. While the suburban hospital Shane was born in had a neonatal intensive care unit, they were not optimistic about his chances of survival. When he was transferred into their ward, he did not respond to any of the respirators he was hooked up to. It was simply too late to save him. The doctors of that unit thought I was in an understandable state of maternal denial when I told them they were wrong. As a result, a mild-mannered social worker from the hospital was sent to counsel us. In other words, his job was to make sure we understood that our baby was about to die. "This isn't your fault," the well-intentioned man assured me as he patted me on the back. "You didn't do anything to cause this. It's just one of those things that we can't foresee. But if you have a priest, a minister, or other spiritual advisor, I suggest you call him or her now to help you get through this. There are only a few minutes of life left in this boy." I knew that he meant well, but I really just wanted him to shut up. I was furious that they had all given up on my baby, that they were taking the position that he was already dead, when he was still alive in the same room with us. But I also knew something they didn't know. I knew that my baby would live, no matter what they said, because I had seen it while praying in the center of a labyrinth 3 months earlier. I had in fact caught my first glimpse of the miracles that were to follow a full 6 years later, or earlier, over 6,000 miles away in a cathedral in France. There is a legend that when Napoleon stormed through the doors of the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Chartres for the first time, the glory of the place stopped him in his tracks. He grew very silent, a rarity as he looked around, taking in the majesty, the artistry, and the sanctity. In a choked voice he announced to his entourage, "Chartres is no place for an atheist." I beg to differ. I think that Chartres is a perfect place for an atheist. The glory and grace of the structure have the potential to convince even the most hardened skeptic. of the presence of God. If ever there was a monument that was divinely guided and inspired to illustrate the concept of on earth as it is in heaven, it is the Chartres Cathedral. I had my first look at Chartres from approximately 20 miles away while driving through France, coincidentally on Mother's Day in 1995. The mismatched yet magnificent spires pointed to heaven from their place on a hilltop that has been sacred to mankind for thousands of years. To describe the majesty of Chartres in detail is beyond the scope of this book. It just may be beyond my ability to ever find the right words to do it justice. Orson Welles, who knew a few things about genius, said Chartres Cathedral was the premier work of mankind, a celebration of God's glory and the dignity of man. I find his description perfectly fitting now that I've seen the miracles that emerge from such a place. But in May 1995, I was a tourist more than I was a pilgrim. To call myself a pilgrim would indicate that I knew how sacred and special the place was when I set out to visit it. I did not. While I knew that the cathedral was a heritage site for its glorious 800 years old architecture and hundreds of magnificent stained glass windows, the extent of my knowledge at that stage came from a couple of photographs in a Paris guidebook. I entered the cathedral for the first time through the majestic western portal beneath a grand relief of Christ enthroned. I gasped at the sheer enormity of the place, at the overwhelming abundance of awe-inspiring beauty contained within. Like so many other tourists before and since, I rarely looked down after entering the cathedral. The stained glass marvels are several stories above eye level, causing visitors to bump into each other as their focus remains directed heavenward. I did not know that when, in so integral to my life now, that as much glory awaited me beneath my feet as above my head. Sadly, most visitors never discover that life-changing secret. But an unusual design on the floor had caught my eye ever so briefly when I first entered the cathedral. It niggled at the back of my mind. Something about it was important, and I went back to take a second look. And embedded in the center of the floor was a large mosaic in stone, large enough for at least 10 adults to stand within it. It was a type of flower, a rose with 6 rounded petals, and a circle in the center. Much of the ancient design had been covered with rows of chairs and was therefore difficult to see in its entirety. The rest of the pattern that surrounded this flower spanned a huge portion of the nave's floor, but this was also covered with chairs, which made it impossible to identify. What I could see of the design was beautiful and elegant, but also curious. I went to stand in the central circle at the heart of the rose, as this was the only area that was not covered with chairs. I stood there, took a deep breath, and fell to my knees. A heated surge of energy flooded my body and pulled me to the ground with its force. I was dizzy for quite a while afterwards, forced to sit down on the wooden chairs that covered the rest of the rose mosaic. When the dizziness wore off, I was consumed with utter satisfaction and fascination. Long after my return to the States, the rose in the floor of the cathedral haunted me. That fascination became an obsession which led to a great and unexpected spiritual quest. It would become the journey of a lifetime, a journey that continues to this day. Along my path to understanding the mystery of the rose with 6 petals, I discovered the image was central point of a huge labyrinth that extended over 42 feet across the floor of Chartres Cathedral. The great Gothic cathedral builders in France had installed labyrinths in the floors of many of their monuments, although only a handful have survived. These are elaborate patterns built with geometric precision by master architects. They are sometimes referred to as mazes, but that is a misnomer. Mazes are places where one gets lost. Labyrinths are places where one is found. The purpose of the labyrinths in the French cathedrals has never been definitively agreed upon by scholars or theologians. Some say they represented a metaphorical path to the Holy Land for those in medieval times who were unable to make such a pilgrimage. Others, myself included, believed that they were created as a prayer tool, a path that could be walked while praying toward a center where God awaits. The labyrinths all have one single path that leads into a central place, a holy of holies, reserved for prayer. I learned that Chartres Cathedral is unique in that it contains the only medieval labyrinths where the center is represented by the 6-petal rose. In the early Middle Ages, and perhaps long before, there was a great spiritual school at Chartres. It was a center for both theology and mystery that is now the stuff of legend. The school counted saints, mystics, philosophers, politicians, and a few infamous heretics among its eclectic group of graduates and teachers. Excuse me. While much of what was taught there is lost to time and history, there are some powerful remnants of the more mystical Chartres teachings available for those who dig deeply enough. My own search was relentless. Thus, along my path, I was fortunate enough to find teachers who invited me back in time through the ancient doors of the Chartres Mystery School. They instructed me in the way of the labyrinths and showed me that the rose at the center is a portal that leads to the ultimate and most priceless treasure, spiritual transformation. I will share some of Chartres' most potent, life-changing lessons within the pages that follow. But the essence of what I discovered is this. The secret of the rose with 6 petals is its perfect correlation to the Lord's Prayer. Each petal represents a different teaching found within the prayer, and the central circle represents the essence and wellspring of love. As love must feed into all aspects of our lives in order for us to achieve true fulfillment. The rose is the perfect spiritual practice as left to us by Jesus. It is our map to the source of miracles. The rose at the center of the labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral is the heart of an unmatched temple built to honor the power of prayer. It was central to the teachings of the medieval mystery school and to this most powerful and sacred Christian tradition that has been nearly lost to us in modern times. During my studies, I learned to use the Lord's Prayer as a committed practice in the same way as the students of the Chartres Mystery School. Since incorporating this prayer into my daily life, I have never been the same, nor would I want to be. This practice restored my faith in God, in myself, and in my fellow human beings. The revelations from the Lord's Prayer that awaited me within that mystical rose changed the course of my life, that of those around me irrevocably. They also brought the miracle that saved the life of my infant son. How beautiful. Well, there we shall stop. And let us just focus on the labyrinths and the mystical rose with 6 petals. Let us come as a child of God to the ancient doors of Chartres Cathedral in France. And yes, it is a magnificent monument. It is beyond words. And you find the 6-petaled mystical rose. And there you stand. You stand in the presence of God. And it is only you, and no one else is there. You walk from petal to petal, but you walk slowly. You walk graciously. And with each step you take to each petal of the 6-petal rose, something is happening within you. Your soul's DNA is being reactivated. You are being aligned with the sacredness of the symbol to the Christ. And you're guided now to come and kneel in the center of the 6-petal mystical rose. And as you kneel, you become aware that something is happening to you. You are being prepared. You're being instructed and guided by the love of the Christ. And suddenly you're guided to lie prostrate, face down, with your heart in the center, arms outstretched, and you can feel the coldness of the marble in the sacred cathedral of God. And suddenly, every chakra in your body is being activated, and your heart is pulsating with love. you become enveloped in the love of Christ. And it's as if he's lying on top of you, with his hands over your hands, and his heart beating through into your heart. And he lifts you up, and he draws you close to his heart. There is a stillness now, and in the silence, all you can hear is the heartbeat of Christ. And it's beating with love for you. It's beating in celebration for you. And you hear the words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our failings as we forgive those who have hurt us. Lead us not astray, but deliver us from the forces of evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. You take a deep breath, and in your out breath you release love. Love to the Christ, who is demonstrating to you his love for you. He is drawing you into the mystery of the sixth petal rose and encoding your soul's DNA with priceless words, messages from beyond that will empower you, reclaim your divinity as a child of love. Embrace that love. Embrace the peace and the love and the joy of the Christ as he calls you to embrace the 7 steps to transforming your life through his prayer to you, the Lord's Prayer. Relax now and embrace his love in the stillness of this moment, and feel his peace. Feel his peace flow through every part of you, because he is the Prince of Peace. Be still. Be still and know that you are loved, O beloved child of God. Relax now.